This video is going to be talking about inverse functions in a real-world setting. Now, hopefully you've already seen maybe the video that talks about inverses, just the concept. And inverses, you're usually switching your x's and y's, right? But let's talk about it in a real-world setting. So, we're going to start off, and this is a landscaping situation. There's a landscaping business that uses the function C, which is really a function with an input of A, where they charges the company charges $50 fee plus $60 per acre. We should start at the beginning. That's always a good place to start. So the charge, or the cost, is a function of the acres. So the A would stand for the acres. And if it's a $50 fee, that means we start with the $50, and we're charging 60 plus 60 per acre, so that's 60A. What would it mean if we found f of 40? Well, that's pretty darn easy. What is f of 40? Well, that means I'm going to take 50 plus 60 times 40. 50 plus 60 times 40, and that's 2450. What does that mean in the situation? Well, that means it costs $2,450 is the cost to mow 40 acres. Remember, the acres is what was the input. So what if we switch it around? So we're going to take this function and switch it around. What if I wanted to find the number of acres that I would charge for somebody who wanted to keep their cost at a certain level? So let's take this function and solve for A. Well, if I wanted to get A by itself, 50 is being added to it, so if I subtract it from both sides, I would get C minus 50 equals 60A. Because think about what you would do. If you knew what the cost, you wanted the cost to be, you'd first subtract 50, and then you would divide by the 60, right? You're going to undo your order of operations to solve for A, to figure out what the acres would need to be. And let's give this one a new name, okay? So we're going to call this one G of, what's my input for this function? It's G of C. Could I find G of 170? And then let's figure out what that means. So that means I'm going to plug in 170 for my variable. And that's 170 minus 50 divided by 60 is 2. What does that mean in the situation? Well, C was my cost, right? And I found 2. So what does 2 mean? 2 acres can be mowed for $170. Now let's go back on each of these and talk about what the units of the domain and range are. So I'm going to rewrite each of these functions. The first one, f of a, which was another name for our cost, right, was 50 plus 60a. What were the units for the domain and the units for the range? Well, if we look back up, the acres was the A, so this is acres, and we were getting back dollars, or cost. On the other function, when we did the little switcheroo, this function, g of c, which really gave me my A back, right? C minus 50 over 60. My domain on this function, I needed to know C, which is that cost in dollars. And what did I get out? Well, if I put in my cost, I got out the number of acres. What's the domain on the first one? How many acres can I mow? And let's practice doing it in interval notation. Well, I could start with 0. You could have no acres at all. I was using the blue pen. 0. To infinity. We probably really couldn't do infinite acres, but that's okay. We're just going to go with it. What's the range? Well, let's think about that. The smallest amount of acres we could do is 0. And if I plug in 0, 0 times 60 is 0. So the smallest amount they'll charge you is 50. Now, we really wouldn't have 0 acres because they really wouldn't charge us for nothing. So let's say we're not going to include 0 because that would be kind of dumb. So we really wouldn't include $50 because they're not going to charge you $50 if they don't come out there. Now, what's the smallest amount of dollars I can put into this function? Well, if I plug in 50, I have 50 minus 50, which is 0. So I have to have more than $50 to even make this function make sense. If you plugged in $40, you'd have a negative amount, which can you have negative acres? No. Now, if I did plug in 50, 50 minus 50 is 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. What has happened with my domain and range? The domain and range literally switch. Now, I want to do one more thing. There was something about if these truly are inverses, I can do a composite of them, and they should undo each other. In other words, let's try doing f of g of c. In other words, take that function rule, and that is my new input in here. So I'm going to take that whole rule and plug it in for A here. So that's 50 plus 60 times all of that stuff. C minus 50 divided by 60. What happens when you have a fraction that has the same number of the denominators, which you're multiplying by? Well, they divide out. Divide. And I'm left with 50 plus C minus 50. 50 minus 50 is gone, and I just get C back. Now, it passed the first test to prove that these two are inverses. Let's try the second test. The second test is to reverse our composite. So this time, I'm going to take this function rule, oops, that's an A, sorry, and plug it into that one. So this rule says I'm going to take my input minus 50 divided by 60. So I'm going to take this rule and plug it right there. 50 plus 60A minus 50 divided by 60. Well, that's really just 50 plus 60A minus 50. 50 minus 50 is gone, so I'm left with 60A in the numerator divided by 60, which just gives me A. When you do a composite function and you just get back your input, doing it each direction, that means you have these are truly inverses.